the Radio Society of Great Britain is proud to sponsor TX Factor.
Hello and welcome to TX Factor. You know, it's hard to believe that it's 10 years ago that I was stood on this very spot filming the first ever introduction to the first episode of TX Factor here at the Marconi Centre at Poldhu in Cornwall. And obviously since then, like a fine wine, I've aged very well. So, did he or didn't he? Well, let's head inside the Marconi Centre now, because waiting for us is a man who thinks he knows the answer to that question. Well, maybe not. Well, here we are anyway at this location, this very famous location that celebrates the man who shrank the world. And in this episode of TX Factor, we're going to be doing a bit of world shrinking ourselves with something that Marconi couldn't have even dreamt of, a geostationary satellite.
A fine wine indeed, more like a pint of Doom Bar. Anyway, as Bob mentions in this anniversary episode, we discover how to set up a base and mobile QO100 system in the first of a two-part series. We look at what hardware and software to use and what to expect when you first attempt a QSO. It wouldn't be TX Factor without our free-to-enter draw, and in this show we have 3 books from the RSGB to give away to the first entry out of the 10-year-old Shack Hat. And we pay a visit to Sidmouth in South Devon, where the long-established Sidmouth Amateur Radio Society has settled into their new QTH. We look at the various pitfalls and expenses of converting and managing your own club HQ. Dave Lee G6XUV has all the advice. But first, Bob has a mobile rig to review. It's the latest iteration in the FTM range of transceivers from Yaesu.
This is the FTM500 transceiver. It's a great mobile transceiver, a great little base station transceiver, UHF, VHF, and true dual receive in it as well. And it has a few clever tricks that makes it very easy to operate. So let's show you some of that. First thing we're going to do, obviously, is switch it on. There, and you notice my call sign came up there underneath the Yaesu logo. And actually that's the first thing that happens. If you get this out of the box and switch it on for the very first time, it gives you the option to input your call sign. Why? Well, because if you want to use it on the digital mode, if you want to use C4FM, if it's not got a call sign put into it, it won't let you on there, because the whole point of that is you can't turn up unannounced on digital, because it always shows your call sign on the other person's radio. So you just go into the function list and you go into 121, and there you go, up comes your keypad and you can type in the details of your call sign. And we'll see this used quite a lot. There's a back button here. When we want to get out of anything, we just press back and we end up back where we started. Like most modern rigs, this radio takes a micro SD card, and that's going to be really useful because it means that you can save all the settings on the radio, and also you can do some clever stuff like voice recording and so on. So we'll just power it off. There we go. Make sure that you have clicked it fully home, and then switch the radio back on. And we know now that there's an SD card in here, because when you look on the screen that the letters SD have now appeared here, which tells us we've got a SD card in there. And you are going to need to format it. So to do that, we go into the function menu and we go down to 109. Where are we? 109, format. Press that. Do we want to format? Yes, we do. And there it goes, formatting away. And then once that's formatted, the SD card can be used for recording QSOs. You can get it to record stuff off scanning, as we'll show you later, or you can record your own voice messages if, like me, you're too lazy to call CQ yourself. So you can see we have our dual receive running here, which operate entirely independently, and you can monitor on the 2 different VFOs either the same band, different modes, same modes. You can have different bands, different modes, but they are both working as receivers all the time. we've got independent volume controls. And if I just press the volume control in like that, I can adjust the squelch. And the same applies for this one. But it's only this top one here that is going to be your one that you transmit on. So when you want to transmit, you have to flick, if it's a frequency on the bottom here you want to use, you flick it up to the top. But on the display, and I'll show you how you do that in a minute, but on the display here, we can see the two VFOs set up on two different frequencies. Let's just talk through some of the controls here. And the first one that we have is GM, and that's to do with when you're using it in digital mode for creating groups. So we won't worry about that for the moment. And the one next to it is the Wires X button. Now, Wires X has a whole separate manual that you can download from Yaesu to explain how it works. But this is a Wires X compatible radio, which means you can, with the optional cable kit, connect it to a PC and you can use it as a node. And also, if you press the Wires X button, if you want to access somebody else's node and use Wires X as your means of connecting through a node, through the internet, to rooms around the world. So that's what your Wires X button does. The next button along is one that definitely will come in useful. It's labelled SDX. And what that is what we used to call in the old days a preamp. And I could just show you what that means. What it does is its sensitivity DX is what it stands for. Golf 0, Foxtrot, Golf X-ray. Just checking access, no need to reply, but just checking access at the moment. There we go. And if I press the SDX button, you can see that jump in the received signal strength. And you can hear the difference in the background noise as well. I'll take it out. The next button along has an arrow pointing up and an arrow pointing down, which is the one that will swap which way round. We have these. Now, the top one is always the one you're going to transmit on. So if there's something on this bottom receiver that you decide you want to talk to, you're going to need to flip it up to the top so that you can talk to it. So you can flip them backwards and forwards like that. The other thing that you can do when you come to this next button, which is marked display, is one press of that, and we've now turned into just seeing the top frequency that we've got in there. And all this little jiggery-pokery going along the bottom is the band scope. So you've gone into the band scope screen by doing that, and this is showing activity on the band, and you can actually tap on any of these. I think some of these might be QRM, by the way, they're jumping around actually. But if there was a strong signal came up on another oh, there's one there, look, if I tap on him, there we go, he appears on our bottom screen. And the last button along here is the on and off switch, which we don't need at the moment. So let's have a look at the buttons on the front of the radio. I've shown you the volume and squelch knobs for each of those two receivers. And by the way, you can have them both on the same band. And as this is a wideband receive, as well as we'll see in a minute, you've got quite a lot of options into what you can be monitoring on each of these. So it can be different bands, same band, different modes. There's a lot of possibilities there. Then going to this side, this is our function button. So a long press of that gets us into our big function menu, which we've already seen earlier, where we can go through all the stuff that we can set up. And this one down here is going to give me control of that bottom receiver if I want to change the frequency manually. Next across here, this button is marked PMG, that's Priority Memory Group. And if you press that, that's just our 5 favourite memories, and you can very easily load them across from your main memories. But also, this is rather cunning, when it's displaying this, it's also put the scope up on the bottom, and that rather wonderful thing happens, whereas I'm listening here at the moment on 156, but were another repeater to miraculously spring up, I'm going to cheat here, Golf 0, Foxtrot, Golf X-ray, G0FGX. There we go, that's the Torbay repeater, and I can touch that, and it appears there in my bottom receiver. And we can now carry on monitoring that if we want to, or we could bring it up to the top and use it as our main channel, and we could talk to whoever's appeared on there. One thing Yaesu are very proud of with the FTM500 is their AESS speaker system, which is their acoustic enhanced speaker system. How is it enhanced? Well, that's because there's a speaker here on the top of the radio, which they refer to as the rear speaker actually in the manual, but it's on top. and there's also a speaker in the front of the removable head on the radio. And if we go into our function menu 18 and we go to audio equalizer, and then we can set what we want for the front and rear speaker. Now at the moment I've got the front switched off and the rear has 100%, but it gives me the opportunity to make changes, so I can set the tone flat, or I can change the pitch of the front speaker and the rear speaker how I want them. And you can actually adjust the phase between the two of them as well. So I think the idea of this really is so that you can tailor the volume of this to your particular vehicle if you're using it mobile or whatever environment you're using it in. There's a lot of power here. There's 9 watts on the speakers combined. So you can adjust the treble, the bass, whatever, just so it cuts through. You can even use it in your tractor. And we have a band switch down here. So if we press that, we can step through the various bands that the radio covers, because it is wide band. So we're going basically from about 108 megs all the way through to 999.9, and it does divide them up into bands. Let's take a look at how the memories work then. If I press the memory button, I was in VFO, so I'm going to put myself into memories, and we've got a little green light at the top here with M all written in it. Now this is because the radio will divide up the memories by band. So if I were to step through the band that this covers, and that's the air band there, it automatically switches to AM for air band. So you can step through your modes here on the top, and we can step through the bands down here, so we can start off in the band we want to be in. Then if we're trying to find a frequency, we can hold this button in here, which is our VFO button, and up comes, if we give it a long push, we can input a frequency manually, or a short push and the megahertz will flash and we can whiz up or down that way to get near the frequency that we actually want. And when we come to a frequency that we like, so we can pick any old frequency at random here, so let's go for something up here. Okay, we like the look of 152990, and I don't know if anything ever turns up on this frequency, and of course it's not in an amateur band. Don't worry, I can't transmit there because it'll be TX inhibited, but I can monitor that frequency, so I'll add it to my list because I fancy scanning it for some reason. So to do that, all we do is we give a long press and up comes our list of memories. It will automatically have selected the next blank one, but it could be I want to overwrite another memory, so if that was the case I'd scroll up and down. But when I've got it where I want it, another long press, right, and then if we long press again to go into our memory list, we can see it's now added that one there. So that's been added to our memories. And once it's written in there, you might think, do you know what, I'd like to give it a name, that frequency. So if you want to do that, if we just touch there, we get the option to edit it. So we can just edit and into the tag box there, and we could type in a name for it. And also underneath it, which is quite useful, it says scan yes, so we can decide whether or not we want that channel to appear when we're scanning. We could change that to no if I want that channel to be skipped when we're in scan mode. One other interesting thing to note here with our function button, if we give it a long push, we get the whole list, absolutely everything. But if you give it a short press, up comes what they call the CFL, which is essential functions, the ones that we want to be able to get to just at one touch. So I think it's another good convenience function. So I've got in here the step, whether I'm using a tone squelch or not. So I've got toning code on the channel I'm in at the moment. You can change the display mode, is a useful one to be able to get into. I'll talk about that in a moment. To change the tone, it's really easy because I can just now go into there and adjust the tone for that channel. And what's clever about this is you could go into a memory channel that you've already created, so maybe a repeater, and you go, oh, what I want to do is change the tone on this channel. So you'd go into there, change the tone. You haven't got to put it into the memory in any way. Just change the tone there, select it and come out of it, and it will have put it on that channel, and it will just remember that until you went into that particular channel and changed it again. But if you're thinking, oh, okay, well, this hasn't got all the things that I want to add something to this, Well, if we come out of it and give it a long press so we're in the full list, we can go to any other thing that's in our full list here. So let's go repeater shift. Give it a long press. Now, it's now brought up our little small list of much used functions, and if I move that around like that, I can pick a position that I would like that one to occupy. It'll kick out what's in there at the moment, and if I give that a long press. While we're in the CFL, actually, I'll just show you something that I saved in there, which I rather like, is display mode. So if I tap on that, there's a menu here that I can step through, and GPS information. Well, let's just have a look at that. And this has built-in GPS, and as you can see, we're indoors but plugged into our external antenna, and it's still picking up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 GPS satellites, and it's got our location and everything else, and it will also send the same information on APRS, and the radio has a whole menu section for setting it up for APRS so that you can bleep your location to people as you're driving along, or you can run it as a beacon, and all kinds of stuff that you can do there. So that's all enabled on here. And if we also have a quick look in our CFL under display mode, another option which I rather like is the clock. That'll be the most accurate clock in your shack because it's getting its time from the GPS. And if we want to get out of that, bang, there we are, back on the screen we were on before. Also in my CFL, I've got scan. So if I hit that, because we're in VFO, that's just started scanning through the whole band that we're in. Or I can actually start the scan by just pressing the up or down button on the mic to start scanning in that direction. If I go into our memories, this is where it gets interesting because we've got a green M all, which means we've got all the memories in this scan. So if I just hit that, off it goes, scanning its way through all the memories I put in there. But what I could do, if we press the band button, we'll see this changes, and it actually will group the memories by the band that they're in. So this has now changed, and it says M air. So this memory is just all the channels that I've put in there that are in the air band. So if I hit scan there, now it's just scanning my airband frequencies. So I think that's quite a useful thing, the memory grouping, that you can just scan the stuff you want. And as we mentioned before, we've also got our primary memory group, and we could just look at those, and we could also put those on scan if we want. Of course, being a modern Yaesu rig, this has got C4 FM or Fusion, and it's a great digital mode. They call it DN. As you can see here, we're at the moment on 145.625, so we could just go round to memory 79 on here, put it on my hotspot frequency, which is 436. And the great thing about doing this with C4 FM is there's no magic jiggery pokery, no code plugs. It just integrates the action of this into the function of the radio. In other words, you pick a channel, any channel, and you just choose your mode. So your mode could be FM or your mode could be DN. And if you want to communicate digitally, you just pick your channel and you put it on DN, which I have ready to go. No color codes or any other complications, and my hotspot is already connected to a particular C4 FM room. So all I got to do is press the key, Golf 0 Foxtrot Golf X-ray testing, and away we go, straight into the hotspot. Perfect. I really like that aspect of the integration of the functionality of the digital straight into the rest of the radio, and the fact that that is demonstrated very well by the fact that if you have it on auto mode, you can pick any channel, and as it's monitoring, it will decide whether it's an FM signal or whether it's a digital signal, and it will respond accordingly. We can demonstrate that nicely because if I go here, I've gone back into VFO, we've got a simplex channel here, and we're on FM at the moment. But if I press the mode button once, we've taken it into auto monitoring now, where it will decide whether the incoming signal is an FM signal or a digital signal. So in the unlikely event that somebody were to give us a call on DN or C4 FM, there we go, it recognised that and it's told us it's G1 IAR. That call sounds familiar. Golf 1 India Alpha Romeo, this is Golf 0 Foxtrot Golf X-ray. Are you hearing me digitally and wonderfully?
I'm hearing you digitally and wonderfully and very clearly. Are you hearing me okay on C4 FM?
Very much so. Nice clear audio and a nice demonstration of the fact that it's just really easy to set up a simplex QSO. Presumably it's the same if you're using a repeater. You just go to the repeater channel, set it up in the normal way, and there's no clever stuff to access the repeater. Just put it in the mode that you want to use.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to have set your radio up to get into repeaters with either FM or digital, but the repeater will auto-sense what signal it's receiving, and you are good to go. So if, for example, digital mode is better than the analog FM mode, just go with digital.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So there we are. We've proved how straightforward that is. And there is one last clever feature on here, because we put the SD card in earlier on. And of course, that's useful for being able to share your settings, because you could download all the settings of the radio onto the SD card. You can, as I say, record your voice for calling CQ, etc. But you can also, rather cunningly, leave the radio monitoring when you're not there and hear what it's heard when you get back. And I've just called up my handy list of my favourite functions, and one of them here is record and stop. If I just press record, there we go, it's put record up there, and if I come out of it now into the main screen, if you just look at the top here, a pause button. Now, it's set up just monitoring to itself. If it hears anything appear on this channel, it will record it for us. So here we are, we're monitoring this channel. Golf 0, Foxtrot, Golf X-ray, Golf 0, Foxtrot, Golf X-ray, just testing, no need to reply. And you can see it's changed to red, it's recording. And as soon as the carrier drops, it will stop recording. And there we are, and we could now play that back. Now, the interesting thing there is we could leave it monitoring a particular channel. Anytime it hears any activity, it will record it and save them all as separate files. Or we could put it on scan, and we could leave it scanning, and each time it hears some activity on a channel, it would record that. And then when we want to stop it from doing that, we've got to go back into that menu and press stop. And it has stopped. And then in order to play it back, we just go into the appropriate menu on the function button here. And there we go. Let's have a listen. Golf 0, Foxtrot, Golf X-ray, Golf 0, Foxtrot, Golf X-ray, just testing. No need to reply. Looking at the back of the radio then, we've got a standard connector here for the antenna that accepts a PL259 plug, and it's just the one antenna socket for VHF, UHF and wideband everything. Quite a chunky, substantial fan here, which will stop it getting too hot when you're running in 50 watts or 25 watt mode. We've got a mini DIN connector in here, and this is going to be the main way that you're going to talk to the radio if you're going to connect it to a computer for wires X or for digital modes. You'll do all that through there using optional leads that you can get from Yaesu. But you can replace the dual speakers in the radio with extension speakers using the two sockets here. It may be that if you want to use this mobile, you're going to want to separate the head from the main body of the radio. This is something we like to see in modern mobiles. Very easy. It's just a one-click button here. Off comes the head. As you can see, it's got a fairly short lead on there at the moment, but you can buy the optional longer lead for the separation kit, which will enable you to place the radio well away from the main body of the radio, well away from the head. So I'll just pull it off there. And first of all, I just want to show you the back of the control head because of this little bit here, which is where you screw in a swivel ball. Why would you do that? Well, because you can get an adapter kit from Yaesu, which is the swivel adapter kit, which goes between the main body of the radio and this. And once you've screwed the ball in there and then connected it to the bit on the main body, if you're using the radio in one position, and you could use it in the shack this way as well, it means you can tilt it at all kinds of weird and wonderful angles so that you get the perfect viewing angle and perfect touching angle for you in your shack. Even if you don't have that optional kit, you can see there's a couple of screws on the side here. And that means that with the head on the body of the radio, you can lift it up and down to a certain extent just to get a better viewing angle. One other thing just to show you that when you have the head unit off, you can see there's two sockets here. That's the one that the control head plugs into, and this is a mic socket, so you can use an extension lead to plug the mic directly in to the main body of the unit there. In summary, the Yaesu FTM500 is a great little transceiver. You could use it mobile. It makes a great little base station. As you've seen, a lot of flexibility in that. Really loud audio, which I think is great if you're going to be using it in a mobile environment. And you've got the rear speaker and the front speaker. And of course, if you were going to use it in your vehicle, you might want to put the main body of the radio somewhere discreet and just have the head unit there. So you could just use the speaker on the front of the head unit if that's what you want to do. You could do simultaneous reception of 2 different frequencies on the 2 different receivers in there that both operate at the same time, and you could have same band but different frequencies, or you could have different modes, any combination you like. You've got built-in GPS, you've got built-in APRS, and there's a whole section in the manual that explains how all of that works, because there's quite a lot to that, and I know there's a lot of aficionados of that out there, and this radio comes ready to go with all of that. You've got variable power, so 50 watts on high power, 25 watts for your middle power, and just 5 watts on low power. You've got FM and C4 FM for transmit, and it's got wideband receive, so that's going to be FM for most of it, but of course AM on the air band, and it will select that automatically. And it goes from 108 megs all the way up to 999.9 megs, and of course the cellular is blocked in the USA. They always put that in brackets, don't they? You've got the removable head so that you can tuck the body of the radio away elsewhere when you're operating it in the car. We've got the micro SD card so you can save all the settings that you've got, and there are a lot of them that you can change on this radio. Save all those to your SD card and maybe share them with a friend who's got the same radio. We've got the DT MF mic, so that comes as standard, so that's very useful if you're using Echolink or anything like that to be able to have those tones on there. And there are some of the rig functions that you can control from the microphone. I didn't mention earlier on that it has Bluetooth, so I know that's handy for a lot of mobile operators, so you can use any Bluetooth headset with it. And as we mentioned before, it is Wires X compatible. So it's a lot of radio in one box.
Still to come on TX Factor, a chance to win 3 RSGB books in our free-to-enter draw, QO100 Part 1, and a visit to sunny South Devon. And that's after this.
We're visiting the HQ of the Sidmouth Amateur Radio Society. Now, I've not been in this particular building all that long, and the story behind it is an interesting one because they've reclaimed this building for amateur radio. And I'm with the secretary of the Sidmouth Amateur Radio Society, Dave G6XUV. So, Dave, how did it come about that you were able to get this building?
We were homeless for a long time. The society started in 81. And we've sort of sofa hopped, really, as they call it nowadays, at various locations. We were at one location for 30 years. It never worked out, really. We moved onward to a golf driving range where we were for a long time, and that was good, top of a hill, but not ideal premises, really. So this came up. This came up in 2018. Got to get my dates right here. And we talked to the local authority who were the landlord for 2 years and dragged on and on and on and on. And in 2020, we signed a lease on the building. And this was completely derelict. I mean, it was a bit of a state, to say the least. The building had been empty for 6 years. It had been a football social club. There was a bar in here, skittle alley, and lots of chairs and various bits and pieces, and it wasn't suitable to use as a club. But we spent a whole year from July one year right through to the next year working pretty well non-stop on knocking lots of the building down and constructing radio rooms and just finishing it off. We're very fortunate that the club chairman is a retired carpenter, and John wouldn't sign anything off unless it was perfect. So when you look at things, you'll find they're finished to a high standard.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because here it was, a building that belongs to the council, but it's been abandoned for all that time. So it's home to a lot of spiders and dust, and you've come in and sorted it out. So I guess that's part of what you've had to do, not just sign a lease, but take responsibility for it.
Yeah, well, we are a typical radio club. We have to have a formal structure to be affiliated to the RSGB. So you have to have chairman, vice chairman, secretary and treasurer. So we've done that, and then we've got our members. Basically, we have signed, so that the upper echelon, the four of us, call us what you will, we have signed. We are responsible for the building. And we negotiated a good price. I mean, we've negotiated a lease where we are completely responsible for the whole place. And we're managing, we are managing. The only thing that came into the equation, which we hadn't thought about to start with, was there is quite a large insurance premium every year to pay. So, you know, the lease itself is not too bad, but then you have to pay almost the same amount again for your insurance. If you're doing the business properly anyway, after insurance.
Somehow, though, I suppose, you've got to find that money, haven't you? You've got the insurance, as you mentioned, and you've got your lease to pay every year. So that must fall back onto the members. So how have you sorted that out financially?
When everybody's paid up at the end of the year, we have about 25 members normally. So not a lot of members. But what we've done is, instead of the normal £25 a year membership, we have really jumped onto the members, and they now pay £80 per annum, which for a lot of people is, throw their toys out of the pram sort of situation. But we've looked at it, and we need that amount of money to pay the bills. And as such, it seems to be working very, very well. It equates, you're a member now of a club. You can use our radio equipment whenever you like. You can come to as many meetings as you like a year, and it works out at £1.59 per week. So not the end of the world.
It's a really great room, this, isn't it? It's a great building, great resource for you as an amateur radio society, and there can't be many in the same position as you, clubs that have their own HQ, which is their property. But I guess it could be used by other members of the community too.
Well, this is the idea. We've once we've got going, we've now been we've actually been sort of open for business for 2 years now, and we have sort of subtly changed the name of the building because I've had to produce documents for hire and various things. We are a community hub, and the idea is that we want to use the premises for other hobbies. We're using it maybe 2-3 nights a week for our activities, and the idea is that we want other hobby groups to join us. Things like computer groups, electronics groups, anything like that. So we all learn from one another, to be quite honest.
Thanks, Dave. We're really impressed, and the way that your membership and sort of the leadership of the club have come together to make this a reality, because you've done a fantastic job turning this derelict building into a great home for an amateur radio society, and of course possibly a resource for the rest of the community. And I think this is a road that's a great one to go down for amateur radio clubs, because it sort of integrates the whole amateur radio movement into the rest of the hobbies and the crafts and the life of the communities where the clubs are based. So we wish you success with that, and well done.
Well done indeed to all the folks at Sidmouth Amateur Radio Society, and to Dave himself, who appeared in our very first edition of TX Factor back in February 2014, when he explained to Mike all about the use of 2-meter repeaters. In a future episode, we'll be following the progress of SARS as they install a brand new Yaesu repeater into its new location. Right, time for the free-to-enter draw and a bundle of 3 RSGB publications to be given away. This time we have the Antenna Notebook, edited by Lorna Smart 2E0POI, with some great antenna ideas for all bands. Damon Tilley G4USI has written HF Amateur Radio for Everyone. It's aimed at those new to the HF bands or anyone returning after an absence. And the Steadfast RSGB Yearbook for 2024. If you didn't get your copy for Christmas, then now's your chance. All 3 books can be yours if your entry is first out of the TX Factor Shack Hat. It's free to enter, and full details, terms and conditions can be found on our website. Good luck!
For a long time, I've had an ambition to get on the QO100 satellite, pretty much ever since it's been up there, and I was able to go on to that British Amateur Television Club SDR that lets you tune through the narrowband transponder, which is actually, it's only based at SDR a few miles from where we're sitting at the moment at Goonhilly in Cornwall. And I've listened to it and thought, that's fantastic. I'd really love to get onto that satellite, but how to do it? And I've looked at all the different ways, and there's quite a lot of ways that you can put together your own station quite economically. But I was trying to think of a way that I could do it as tidily and as easily as possible to have a station that I could set up at home, but I could also take out with me portable if I want to. And that's when I found out about the DX Patrol Groundstation 2. Now, on their website, they've been supplying for quite some time. They're a company based in Portugal, and they've been supplying various bits of equipment, up converters, down converters, LMBs ready to go, and helical transmit antennas, and various bits and bobs to help you to put together a station. They then came up with an all-in-one box solution, which was the DX Patrol Groundstation. But that wasn't full duplex. So now they have introduced the Groundstation 2, which is full duplex, which means that you can listen to the downlink at the same time as you're transmitting. Obviously, you need 2 radios to do that, or a radio that works in full duplex, like the IC 9700, and away you go. All in one box, all neat and tidy, and for reasons that will become clear later, it's going to go down with the senior station management here a little bit better if it's a tidy setup. So let's have a look at the ground station. This is the DX Patrol Groundstation 2, and we'll see it in action in a bit, but I just thought I would show you the controls. It's very straightforward on the front panel here, not a lot, just the on and off switch, and this knob here, which will scroll us through the menus when we're switched on, and the display on the front. Now, as you can see, we've got a lot of connectors on the back here, and that's because of what this box of tricks does, because it's got to take an input for transverting up to 2.4 gigs, and it's got to take receive from an LMB on the satellite dish to transpose down to whatever frequency you're going to be listening to on your receiver. And it's also got to put the 2.4 gigs that's been converted from whatever you're using as your driver up to the dish for transmission. And also it has to have a GPS antenna connected to it. So these are all the connections here, starting with the power connector here. So it's 12 through 24 volts that you can supply this on, any voltage between 12 and 24. And at 12 volts, it needs your power supply to be up to about 5 amps. So you've got to be able to supply 5 amps for when it's on transmit. So we have two SMA connectors here, are for the IF transmit and receive, and IF receive only. Now this is really important because when you're operating in full duplex, you're going to use both of these. So this one is okay to transmit up because at 500 milliwatts of TX power into it, it will switch the receiver out and switch into transmit. This one here is receive only. So when you're working in full duplex, the way I'm going to connect this up, I'm going to have my 2 meters going into here, which is going to be converted up to the 2.4 gigs. And I'm going to have my SDR receiver connected to this one, listening to the downlink. If you accidentally transmit into this one, you're going to kill the box. So you just don't want to do that. Now, if you weren't operating in duplex, you could go transmit and receive just out of this one. That's fine, because when you hit 500 milliwatts of transmit power into here, the Vox kicks and it starts transmitting. Ideally, you want about 1 watt of drive. 5 is the absolute maximum, and that will give you about 10 watts out here, out of this end connector on 2.4 gigs. Now, we need 2 connections to our LMB, and as you can see, these are the standard F connectors that we use for our domestic satellite TV. And the reason there's 2 is because you use a modified LMB for satellite work, for satellite communication work through QO100, because you need to stabilise. The LMBs that we use for satellite TV tend to wander about a bit in frequency. It doesn't matter really for a TV signal because it's so wideband. But when you're working with sideband, we need to be frequency accurate. So what you need to do is lock the LMB by sending it a nice reference frequency. So we've got 2, that's the signal. So that's the normal converted signal coming down from the LMB, and this one is sending the lock signal up to the LMB. How do we lock that signal going up to the LMB? Well, that's where this comes in. This connector is for a GPS antenna. And I note from the manual it says, you know, have the GPS antenna outside if you can. I have to say I've had quite good success with it indoors. If you get it near a window, or where I'm going to finally install it in my garage, I'm hoping I'll be able to still see through the garage roof plenty of satellites. We will find out, see if it works from there. So those are our connections. There's also one optional PTT rather than it working on the Vox. So if you want to actually control your transmit by switching it to transmit, you can do it through there, which, as I say, will take up to 500 milliwatts to trip that. You could have a manual PTT connected in here. And a couple of little pots on the back here. One is for the Vox delay, and the other one is receive sensitivity. You can turn the receive sensitivity up and down on the receiver. And they do say, DX Patrol, that the optimum drive is about 1 watt. So that's ideal. And that will give you the right output, which is 10 watts out on 2.4 gigs. So you can select your IF frequencies for transmit and receive, and I'll show you that a little bit later on. But basically from 10 meters right through to 1297 megs. You can pick a band in there for uplink and a band for your downlink, depending on what radios you're going to be using for that purpose. There we are. Those are the connections. So now we need to connect some cables to them, but we're not going to do that here in the shack because I've got a special place for this to live. It's a place that's close to my heart because it's where the beer lives. That's in my fridge, and this is going on top of the fridge in the garage. Before I set everything up on my main 1 meter offset dish, I thought I'd just show you the DX Patrol LMB that I'm going to use, and I've just set it up here on my portable dish before we put it up on the big dish so that you can see it. And it has, as we mentioned earlier, got 2 outputs on it. One of them is the signal output, which is the one that is going to give us the down converted signal from the satellite, down converted by the LNB. And actually I call this an output, it's actually an input, because this is the one where we're going to put the lock oscillator frequency up that comes from the ground station, which is really tightly locked to the GPS, which will keep the LNB nice and stable and make sure that we can resolve SSB signals without all kinds of wobbliness. So that's fine. We're going to have two leads coming down from the LNB going to the ground station too. But what about the transmit side of it? Well, DX Patrol used to make, and I think it's still available, their original helical antenna, which is this one, which is just 2 turns. And this would, you move these clamps off like this, tighten them up, and you just slot it over the LNB, then pull these around and tighten them up. And then you connect your 2.4 gigs cable to that end connector. But DX Patrol have now introduced a new helical antenna. So this is a 4-turn one, and it has this little sort of radome to go over the top of it. So we screw that on to give it its weather protection. Easier said than done. Hang on, I don't want to drop this because it is a little bit fragile. There we go. And it has adjustable clamps here which will hold it onto the LNB, and this just sits over the front of the LNB, and the connector here, which is where we're going to connect our 2.4 gigs cable to. So we simply place it over the LNB like so. If I can pull the clamps back far enough, it'll let me do it. Then we just push those clamps in and then tighten up the screws, and then we do the same on the other side. There we go, and then we just have to connect our 2.4 gigs cable, and that's how the LNB assembly and the helical antenna assembly are going to look when they're up on the big dish. I've already got an LNB on my 1 meter dish, and I keep the other one on my portable dish full time, so the LNB's there ready to be connected up to the ground station. All I need to do now is go up the ladder and add this. Just before I do though, I want to tell you a little bit more about it, because the reason DX Patrol have developed this new 4-turn helical is because it's got more gain, and they reckon that you can use it with smaller dishes down to a 40 centimeter offset dish, and you can still get a good signal into the satellite as long as you've got enough power to go into it. So great if you're going to go portable like I'm going to with my caravan, or maybe for emergency comms or whatever, when a smaller dish is going to be easier than carting around the bigger dishes we used to need. So as I've said, it's pretty easy to clamp it onto the LNB. I'm hoping that will be easy to do when I'm up a ladder. I would invite you to watch me, but just in case I fall off, I'll show it to you when it's done. We're getting near the moment of truth now, and the dish is up. We've got the helical antenna clipped over the LNB. The LNB is up, so we're all ready to go. And I know, what a devil our producer can be in terms of outtakes. So I thought we'd put it all up there and then start talking about it, rather than having endless outtakes of me falling off the ladder. So it's up there now, it's ready to go. And you'll notice we've got the 2 leads coming out of the LNB. As I told you, one of those is the synchronizing signal that's going to keep it nice and stable, and the other one is actually providing the downlink signal. So I've cunningly stuck a bit of green tape around one of them at each end, so I can identify which of the 2 leads are which when I come to connect them up to the ground station. And the ground station itself is in the garage, but my shack's not in the garage. So why have I done that? Well, because it's all about the cable length, because we can see also from the green helical antenna, we've got the end connector on the back, and we've got a fairly chunky cable coming out of that, which is for the 2.4 gigs from the ground station up to that antenna. And that's where you can have a lot of losses. And I realized that the cable run from where the dish is, and this is the only place I could put the dish, down into my shack, was going to be too long. So the solution to that is to put the ground station in the garage here. That makes a shorter cable run, particularly for that 2.4 gigs and for the LNB cables as well. And then from the ground station, 2 coax feeds down to my shack. One of those will give the 144 megs up from my Yaesu FT857, which I'm using to drive the transmit transverter in the ground station, and the other cable taking the 432 downlink, which is going to my SDR radio in the shack. Here we are in the G0FGX garage. If this was a Zoom call, of course, I'd have a tropical island or something behind us. But as this is TV, I can't cover up the fact that this is my garage. Not the tidiest garage in the world, probably though not the most untidy garage in the world, but that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in what's on top of the freezer here, because that is the site that I've chosen for the Groundstation 2. And as I explained, that just means I keep my cables shorter to the dish and then run the RF cables down into the shack. So what we'll do first of all is switch this on, and you'll see what the Groundstation does in its boot up sequence. So first of all, we've got the splash screen. Then it sends a little bit of Morse code. I've got that switched on at the moment. That is an option, you can switch that off. But it's quite a neat little thing for anybody who's visually impaired, because it does tell you in Morse what's going on as you're adjusting the various settings and going through the menus. Now, what we're waiting for it to do, two things. As you can see at the moment, we've got wait and acquiring position. The GPS antenna, I've popped it just on the top of the ground station here, and it still will manage to acquire a good few satellites, and so it'll be able to work out where we are. So it's doing two things. You can see it's acquiring a position for us, and the other thing that it's doing is bringing the oven up to temperature that's got the crystal in it that's controlling the frequency here. So that's temperature controlled, because you really need pinpoint accuracy on the frequency. Otherwise you get some serious frequency excursions while you're transmitting, which will not make you friends with the rest of the users of QO100. So it's very important that you don't start transmitting until that wait on there changes to lock. So we're waiting to acquire our position, and we're waiting for it to lock up. When we were first getting ready to film this, our cameraman said, could you dust the dust off the front? I said, that's not dust, that's stars. Look, there's the satellite, and there's these little stars. They're part of the design. Also, you'll notice it is showing the time at the bottom here, and that's because I have switched the unit on once before. Why did I do that? And it did lock up on the GPS, and it got its time, and it's remembered the time. The reason I switched it on previously to this big moment is because I needed to line the dish up. Now that's another bit we didn't film, because quite frankly that is quite tedious, waving the dish around and getting it all lined up. I knew vaguely which direction to point. It's about 22.4 I think the elevation from here, and about 144.2 I think the direction for me from here. So what I did is I took a shorter lead for the downlink out to my SDR receiver connected to my laptop, put it underneath the dish, turned it up loud and set it on the beacon frequency, and then waved the dish around, listened to the beacon, picked it up by ear, and then got my second assistant to watch the S meter on the receiver while I picked it up, and then clamped it all off. So that's how we got all that set up, and as I say, that would have been pretty boring to watch, I think. There we go. So not only has it acquired a satellite position, and it will tell us later on, we can step through the menus, I can show you, it'll tell us exactly where we are, but it's automatically found my grid square and is displaying that now on the front screen. So it knows we're in India Oscar 70 India Charlie. I mean, if you want to go all the way through, India Oscar 70 India Charlie 65. So it's very precise on where we are in the grid square. It's got the time is sorted, and we also have a lock here now, which means we can now transmit. And it is really important that you don't try and transmit until it's locked, because otherwise you will be wandering about all over the satellite. Now you step through the menu using this button here. So if I go one notch forward, it just tells us the temperature of the unit, current that it's drawing at the moment, and there's our exact positioning as far as the GPS has worked out. And this tells us what configuration we've got set up, so we can change any of these. And you notice that it's got an update firmware on there, and it has a built-in Wi-Fi access point in it. And if you want to update the firmware, you do that using your mobile phone. You connect to it through its own Wi-Fi, and you can upload new firmware software to it that way if you need to. But this is the latest version of the software that we've got there. This screen here, we've got RX on one side and TX on the other side. So these are the frequencies we're using. Actually, it's got them both the same at the moment, so that's no good. So if I press this in, I can go across to there, and I can press that, and I can now step through all the options. And actually we can go from 28 megs, 28.5, or we can have 50.5, or it's a bit quick there, 70, I'm going too fast for it, 144.5 or 432.5. So that's the one I want, 144. And if I press that, that's now set. And if I press it again, I can change the RX. Well, I don't need to because that's what I want it to be. I want the RX going down into my shack to be on 432. So that's converting the 10 gig satellite signal, comes into the LMB, is converted down to the frequency that this works out, which is around 700 megs, I think. And then that's converting that down to the 432.5. So I'm happy with that. So we can just confirm all of those. There we are. So that's set up. RX is coming down at 432.5, transmit is 144.5. And just so I can show you the other menu items here, and to go through the menu items, to scroll through, you just turn this knob right or left. So this screen here is telling us basically how the ground station is feeling in itself. So that's the current we're drawing, 0.63 amps. That's the voltage to it at the moment, and that is the temperature of the unit. And then if we go to the next screen, this actually shows us that even with the GPS antenna indoors here in the garage, we've acquired quite a lot of satellites there, so that's quite impressive. We're ready to go, I think. So the next thing to do is to go down into the shack and check that we're hearing the downlink coming down on 432 megs from the ground station to my shack, and then we'll try it out on transmit.
And for that, and more reviews of amateur radio equipment and accessories, you'll have to wait until the next episode of TX Factor. But not long, it's due out in just a few weeks' time. So why not subscribe to our channel and visit the website for more information on everything we've covered in this show. So until the next time, thanks for watching and being loyal viewers over the past 10 years. From all the team, 7-3. The Radio Society of Great Britain is proud to sponsor TX Factor.
Sorry, I'm messing you about here, but I think I did a waffly bit in the middle there.
That was quite good.